And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on this Black Friday. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving out there. Had a couple days off to enjoy turkey, spend time with family. Hopefully you guys got to do the same, spend some time with friends as well. And we're going to be right back at it. We're going to go through the weekend this weekend because we had the 2 days off during the week. So make sure you join us every single evening through the next few days. And then all next week we'll have live updates. And then we're going to be at the winter meetings. We'll have a lot of live broadcasts throughout the day, throughout the winter meetings. So make sure you hit that like button and subscribe here on YouTube. Follow us over on X, formerly known as Twitter, at UpsideSN. So without further ado, let's kind of get into some of the headlines. MLB Trade Rumors, again, great site for you guys to kind of check up on some of the headlines from around the sport. Just kind of some items that popped off over the last couple of days. We left off a couple of days ago with the Kyle Gibson signing with the Cardinals. Got a one-year deal with an option there, team option there as well. So good get for the Cardinals, adding 2 starting pitchers. I wonder if they're going to go more of the bulk approach this offseason and try to get one guy at the very end to kind of headline this rotation, like Montgomery or somebody of that ilk. I just wonder about their ability to spend money right now because they're giving out one-year deal after one-year deal to some aging starting pitchers. They already have a couple of other starters that don't have much experience in that rotation and guys that are on the very ends of their current deals as well. We'll see what ultimately happens there. The other headline is that the Diamondbacks and Mariners, yes, the Mariners and Diamondbacks, once again got together for another trade. They've gotten together for, I think, 5 or 6 trades in the last 3 years alone. This one sends third baseman Eugenio Suarez to the Diamondbacks, taking over the spot Evan Longoria held last year. So we'll kind of check in on that one for you here. The return for them is Zebby Zavala and a reliever go back to the Mariners in return. I think this is more about clearing off the books a little bit for Seattle. You look at the money that they're trying to dole out this offseason. They're trying to bring in outfield talent like Juan Soto. They're supposedly in the running for a Seattle native in Blake Snell, who actually said or was at the 49ers Seahawks game this over the Thanksgiving break. You saw him kind of set things off to start that game. He was there as the 12th man, if you will. But for the Diamondback side of things, they get the more recognizable player. Eugenio Suarez was really great for a few years with the Cincinnati Reds, signed that long-term deal that has looked nothing but an albatross ever since he signed it. The Reds were able to pawn him off on the Mariners because they needed a third baseman after Kyle Seager retired. For the Mariners, high strikeout totals. They've got a lot of guys on their roster who had high strikeouts last year. They're not going to bring back Teoscar Hernandez more than likely. If they don't bring back if they don't bring in Juan Soto, getting rid of a guy like Eugenio Suarez at least leaves the door open to a possible reunion with Teoscar Hernandez, but I still think that's a long shot. For the Diamondbacks, what exactly are they getting? They're getting a little bit more upside at third base offensively. Longoria, long past his prime, I think would be a kind way to put it. But for the Diamondbacks, they were in the third base market. They were supposedly in there for Matt Chapman, among others. This is a good way to solve their issue by not having to give up a whole lot. As far as the money on it, that's the interesting part of this. I'm just surprised the Diamondbacks were willing to eat the salary of a Eugenio Suarez. I understand he posts. What that means is basically he's there for 162. I understand he's there for you when that comes to when you're thinking about something like that. But just the fact of the matter that he's available doesn't mean he's being productive in those at-bats. And he's nowhere been the level of third baseman that we saw with the Cincinnati Reds. We saw him kind of shake off a little bit of that over the last couple of years with Seattle, but I'm still not convinced that this is a good move for them. I understand they didn't give up much in Vargas and Zavala, but for Seattle, this is a big win because it opens up the possibilities for them. They had just acquired Luis Urias from the Boston Red Sox about a week ago. He's probably penciled in as the opening day third baseman right now. I'm not convinced that he will ultimately be their everyday third baseman. I think they could still go another direction, even in free agency. But as things stand right now, I think this is a big win for Seattle to be able to get rid of that contract more than anything else. At the time, I thought the trade for the Reds anyway, they got rid of a couple of big salaries there in Winker and Suarez. I thought maybe he'd get back to some of the productive years we saw with the Reds in Seattle, but ultimately it just never worked out. Ultimately, the Reds were able to get rid of that contract, both of those contracts, honestly, and it worked out well for them. And then you look here at the Mariners, I think getting rid of both Winker last offseason and Suarez this offseason will bode well for them and their future. It's going to be a very tough AL West. You already have the World Series champion. That's right. My Texas Rangers, World Series champion. Texas Rangers, Houston Astros are in there. They're going to be very difficult. Seattle right now is easily the third best team behind the top two. Then it's going to be literally a free fall until you get to the Angels and A's. I think the Angels could spend some money, at least stay representative of a decent team. But I think the best course for them is just to bottom out and get some high draft picks, reset that club overall. I don't think they'll do that. I think Artie Moreno's going to try to spend some money, keep them in contention, and ultimately that's going to keep them around that 81-81 record, which is exactly where you do not want to be. So that's kind of the big move, if you will, over the Thanksgiving break here. A couple other international players are expected to be posted within the next week or two. Shota Imanaga is going to be posted on Monday. Young-Ho Lee is expected to be posted around the winter meetings. We already saw Yoshinobu Yamamoto has already been posted. That bidding process began on Tuesday. That process I'm expecting to conclude around the winter meetings as well. So getting these guys on the market as quick as possible seems to be the name of the game. With as thin as the free agent market is on the position player side, and as quickly as the starting pitching market has already started to move, we're seeing some of these guys come off the board very quickly, like Lance Lynn, like Kyle Gibson. We're already seeing trade talk pick up quite a bit. These things are not usual before Thanksgiving. This is the kind of thing that you see after Thanksgiving and before the winter meetings. So the offseason might be going a little bit quicker right now than what we've seen in the recent history of Major League Baseball. So expect a very active winter meetings. I'm expecting a possibility of Jordan Montgomery signing to a deal. Sounds like John Heyman's hearing from multiple sources that the Texas Rangers, St. Louis Cardinals, and the New York Yankees are the three teams in the market, but everybody in the industry expects him to retain with the Texas Rangers as long as the money is there. If the Rangers decide that they ultimately win the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes or that they have a real chance at it, then it opens up the door for teams like St. Louis, like the New York Yankees, to be able to pry him away. Now, the Yankees, of course, are still trying to do some big things this offseason. They hired Brad Ausmus as their bench coach to replace Carlos Mendoza, who took over as the New York Mets bench boss. But the Yankees just seem to be a team stuck in the middle as far as what they want to do from an organizational standpoint. We talked a lot over the past year about Brian Cashman, about what his future looks like. And I told you last offseason, them being able to re sign Aaron Judge, even though it wasn't necessarily Cashman doing the convincing that got it done. I think that was more on Hal Steinbrenner having that personal relationship, the personal conversations with Aaron Judge that ultimately got it done, not to mention the money, obviously, and just the Yankees brand as a whole. I'm not sure how tied to Cashman Aaron Judge is. Then you saw the last several years how things just ultimately have not worked out. It's been a slow, winding trail down for the New York Yankees. A few years ago, we saw them play guys like Gio Urshela, getting guys having way above average or way above their level of expected production in the lineup. Tauchman comes to mind as well. Luke Voigt comes to mind. And it just hasn't worked out. One of the worst trades we've seen was the Jordan Montgomery trade for Harrison Bader. Absolutely mystifying at the time to me. He played significantly better in the second half of the season. We saw Jordan Montgomery, the second he left town, say, "Thank God I'm out of here. They won't let me use the pitches I need to use." And you see how it's really been working for him in St. Louis and now Texas. I'll be shocked if Montgomery agrees to go back to New York, honestly. Maybe they'll learn their lesson, I guess, but I'd be shocked if the Yankees win the sweepstakes for Montgomery. But I think they've got their eyes on some big things, and Cashman's going to have to figure things out and get this thing back into the postseason. I think they're probably going to have to win at least one round at this point in order for him to remain the GM there in New York. Reason being is just we've seen too many issues with this Yankees roster. The construction that they've gone about just really hasn't worked out for them. I mean, you could point single-handedly to the Giancarlo Stanton trade and the money that was owed to him and other contracts on their books. But it's just one symptom of a bigger problem is that they go after, the launch angle, slug guy, that type of player, and the athletic New York Yankee outfielder, position player, just hasn't really been on the roster the past couple of years. They tried to go for the Joey Gallo trade, another absolute whiff as far as a trade for Brian Cashman. You look at Ezekiel Duran for the Texas Rangers; he can't even get into the starting lineup, even though he's hitting around 300 at the All-Star break. And then you saw his numbers, because he wasn't playing every day, take a little bit of a dive after that. But the Yankees would absolutely kill to have him on their roster right now. He would be their starting third baseman right now if they were able to bring him, or if they still had him. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Can't go back in time, so you just got to move forward. And that's why Brian Cashman has to crush this winter. Sure, they might go down the Juan Soto route, and I think that would be something good for them. Yankees do need stars in that lineup. Aaron Judge is pretty much one-man band there. Anthony Rizzo's getting a little older. He's not exactly as productive as he used to be. He's more of a vocal leader in that clubhouse than Aaron Judge is, so he's very big portion of that team. You really need to have him there. But bringing in another star like Juan Soto would be a great piece, but there's still more work to do. They need a couple of starters. They need a couple of bats in that lineup. Even if they get Juan Soto, they're still going to need to add some other pieces as well. Third base remains a question mark. They have a glut of middle infielders. They need to clean that up as well. But Yankees have some big question marks to answer, and we'll see what they ultimately do. The biggest signing last year that they made was the outside of the Judge, of course, was Carlos Rodon. That just absolutely blew up in their face. The trade for Frankie Montas didn't work out. They've just had all kinds of things go wrong over the past year and a half. The only good thing that they were able to do is retain Aaron Judge. And again, I'm giving credit to that to Hal Steinbrenner. He's the guy that really was able to negotiate that deal and get him to sign on the dotted line, not Brian Cashman. Aaron Judge said so much in interviews after that. Not necessarily that Cashman wasn't responsible, but that it was Hal Steinbrenner, the guy he called when he said, "Hey, I've made the decision, I want to stay a Yankee." He didn't call Brian Cashman. He didn't have that relationship with him. He had it with Hal Steinbrenner. So I'm very curious to see what Cashman does. I wonder if he is starting to feel the pressure, the combativeness we've seen in recent media availability for Brian Cashman. I think is kind of symptomatic of where he is as a leader of that team right now. I think he's starting to feel the public eye on him a little bit more than it ever has been in his tenure there, and it's deserved at this point. He's probably going to go into the Yankees Hall of Fame, if you will. I'm not sure if he'll go into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame, but he has a great case to be there. But the recent history has not gone well for the Yankees, and Cashman is probably the number one culprit of that. Whether things just didn't work out, say like said in the interview that he got into the kind of the testy confrontation with reporters at the GM meetings this month, where he said basically, "Hey, what do you want me to do? The guy's arm blew up. He couldn't pitch. Hey, what do you want me to do? Giancarlo Stanton can't stay healthy for 162." Knowing full well that the agent for Giancarlo Stanton is the same agent for Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the number one free agent starting pitcher on the market that the Yankees desperately would love to sign right now. So I'm not sure how much Cashman's helping out his case by being as combative with reporters as he's been, but we'll see if this works out for him in his favor, or if he's able to, find another way, find another avenue, go the trade route, and see if he can find some magic there. He has had great success in the past with trades, auctioning off Aroldis Chapman in that famous trade that gave the Chicago Cubs their first World Series victory, breaking the curse and everything. Aroldis Chapman ultimately re-signs the following offseason with the New York Yankees, so it was only a 2-month sabbatical essentially away from the team, but they were able to get Gleyber Torres out of it, a number of other pieces as well. That trade was a stroke of genius, along with other trades that he has made in the past, but recently it just hasn't worked out. The magic seems to be gone. We'll see if he has anything left going into this season. So you've seen a few of the transactions that we've had over the last couple of days anyway. Let us know what transaction you're excited to see go down next. Are we going to see a guy like Sonny Gray go to the Atlanta Braves? We'll dig into them here in just a moment. Will we see a trade? Dylan Cease market seems to be picking up. The LA Dodgers that have been talking with Chris Getz, the GM of the White Sox, about actual return for a guy like Dylan Cease. Baltimore Orioles were said to be in there at the deadline. They have since reignited those trade conversations in the offseason as well. That coming from multiple MLB sources as well. So let us know where you guys think the next big trade, the next big signing is going to come from. I think it's going to once again come from the starting pitching market, because the free agent position player market really hasn't been set, and I think it's really waiting on a couple of guys. Shohei Ohtani, I think they're waiting for, and I think they're waiting on Cody Bellinger as well. Outside of that, I mean, there's not too much on the position player side. So the starting pitcher market, I think we're going to see Jordan Montgomery, a Sonny Gray, a Dylan Cease, maybe even a Tyler Glasnow, Eduardo Rodriguez. All of these guys could be the next piece off the board. Blake Snell, I think, is a very good case to be signed at the winter meetings. It sounds like Seattle is trying to clear off some money. They already have a great starting rotation, but they're trying to solve their outfield right now, and I'm sure they're getting tons of asks about what they're starting, or about their young starting pitching. I wouldn't trade that young starting pitching. Their top four: Kirby, Gilbert, Castillo, and Ray. I wouldn't trade those four guys if I'm the Mariners. Any one of those other younger starters, I'm open to. And if they do that, then that could open up a trade for Blake, or open up a signing for Blake Snell. But that would be a great starting rotation if they were able to bring in Blake Snell. But Mariners are looking to accomplish big things this offseason. Dodgers, of course, have all that money that they tried to save this past year. That's why they kind of scaled things down, didn't go after Trey Turner, didn't re-sign a lot of their own guys over the last couple of years because they wanted to reset their tax schedule. And now they will be able to go after Shohei Ohtani full bore. But welcome in Hank, welcome in Bryce, welcome in Vinny. Yanks 2 bats, 2 pitchers. I think the moves will start to pick up since Thanksgiving is over. I couldn't agree more. What moves will the Mets make? We haven't talked about the Mets yet today, but I would put their number one priority as still adding to that starting staff. I mean, they lost Verlander, they lost Scherzer, among others. Their rotation basically is Senga, and I think Carrasco is still there. Not Carrasco, what's his name? Former White Sox pitcher. I can see his face. Anyway, they got 2 starters essentially in their rotation, along with a bunch of question marks. They're heavily interested in bringing in Yoshinobu Yamamoto as well. I think they would have a 2% advantage over any other team right now, if you had to guess, just because Kodai Senga, the number 1 starter in their rotation, has played with him in the past, has already signed off on him being on the team. And Mets really do need some starting pitching. They're not going to bring in a guy like Jordan Montgomery. They could go out there and go after guys like Blake Snell or whoever. But I think Yoshinobu Yamamoto is their top target this year in free agency. I'm sure they'd love to bring in another bat as well. That's been the issue the last couple of years I saw for the Mets. They didn't really solve it last year in the offseason. I thought Carlos Correa would have been a great signing for them to really elevate that offense that really sputtered a year and a half ago. Um, After when they got into September, it really didn't work out for them, and so I thought they would add some more bats. They ultimately just brought back the same guys with maybe some tinkering around the edges in Vogelbach and Pham, and ultimately it didn't work out. Their pitching basically didn't perform very well in the month of April. And then we saw them sell off their two biggest pieces in that rotation outside of Senga in Verlander and Scherzer, and here they sit. Senga's their number one, and then they've got a bunch of question marks after that. What are they ultimately going to have as that starting five or starting six? Because Senga goes every sixth day, not every fifth day. So they're already familiar with going with a six-man rotation. If they do bring in Yamamoto, they won't have to really alter their plans per se for him because he'll fit right in with that six-man rotation that they're going to go with for Senga. But the Mets are going to have a very active offseason again. I don't think they're going to, win the division. I don't think they're going to win the World Series. But I do think this will be a little bit of a retool. It's not really a rebuild for the Mets, even with the trades that they made to get rid of the older, aging starting pitchers in Verlander and Scherzer. They really bought prospects more than anything else. But at some point, money is going to become an object for their owner. And as much as Steve Cohen says he wants to win and is willing to eat as much money as possible to make winning a possibility, money doesn't buy victories, but it does get you a lot of good talent. And it's just a matter of that talent performing. We saw what happened with the Mets last year and the Padres. They, on paper, looked like teams that could win the World Series. What happened with both of those teams? Both of them fell on their face. They didn't really have the guts of the roster, if you will, that would have gotten them to the World Series. I still think they have both really high-end talent. Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Brennan Nimmo, among others for the Mets. On the Padres side, Machado, Soto, Bogarts, Tatis Jr., Musgrove, Darvish. They had all this talent, Snell, Hader, but then the guts, the nuts and bolts of things just didn't work out, didn't translate to victories, so dollars do not buy victories. Now, the Texas Rangers, you might say, hey, they went out there and spent a whole bunch of money, but you look around at their roster, you look out there in left field, Evan Carter. You look out there, the guys who were there for the majority of the season, Travis Jankowski, a minor league sign, Robbie Grossman, 1 year, $2 million. You look in center field, Leody Taveras, an international free agent sign. You look in right field, a waiver claim / trade in Adolis Garcia. Third base, a first-round draft pick, Josh Young. Shortstop, of course, Corey Seager. Second base, Marcus Semien. First base, product of a trade, Nathaniel Lowe. Catcher, Jonah Heim, product of another trade. Had been traded 4 times before he finally found a home in Texas. We heard that said many times during the broadcast of the World Series. And really, he has worked hard to improve his offense. And we saw just how good he got this year. Really, we saw the Rangers as a whole have, 5 starters in the All-Star game last year. Just unprecedented performance out of that Rangers team. And like I was saying, money doesn't necessarily buy you everything, but it can certainly help aid in your process. The Rangers were certainly able to jumpstart their contention window, if you will, by bringing in Seager and Semien last year, and then going out there and getting the starting pitching that they needed this year. Eovaldi, Heaney, they signed Gray the year before. Martin Perez was back on a 1-year deal. They signed Jacob deGrom. That one blew up in their face. Jake Odorizzi was traded for. He never pitched for them. But money does help, but you have to have good bones of a team to start. Now, the Rangers obviously are going to add to that bullpen. They're one of the favorites for Josh Hader. The Phillies are in that market as well. Do not expect him to go back to the Padres. They're trying to trim payroll down to $200 million. We'll see if they're able to do so. I think they will. It's an organizational mandate to really trim that roster, to slim down that salary just a little bit. But the Rangers are going to spend. I wouldn't be surprised if they were over the luxury tax threshold and into the tax penalties at that point. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes for the Rangers to have a roster north of $300 million on opening day. So we'll see what happens. I know that they're interested in bringing in Josh Hader. Say that's penciled in at, say, the Diaz contract, 5 years, 100. We'll just say that's a rough estimate for what he signs for. They're supposedly the favorites for Jordan Montgomery, and even if they sign Shohei Ohtani, they're still going to need another starter in my estimation. They currently have Scherzer, Eovaldi, Gray, Dunning, and Heaney in their starting five. But if you know anything about Chris Young, you want to have at least 7 bona fide starters that you can count on. And then they've still got some minor league guys that they can use at times during the season. So I would not be surprised if they added Jordan Montgomery. Let's go ahead and pencil that one in at, say, 5 years, 125 is kind of the high-end things for him. Shohei Ohtani will pencil him in at, say, 55 million per year over 10, 12 years, whatever that number ultimately ends up being. That gets you really close, if not over 300 million with just those signings right there. That's what the Rangers could do this offseason. Bryce, wouldn't be shocked if the Rangers spend big again? Absolutely. Rangers are going to add at least one big-time bullpen arm. I would expect them to add at least one DH type back, whether that be Shohei Ohtani, Mitch Garver. That's going to be another $15 million bill minimum to bring in that type of bat. And then they're still looking at starters. They're said to be in the market for Yamamoto as well, but on the periphery more than anything else. I think their preference is to bring back Jordan Montgomery more than anything else on the starting pitching market. Vinny, where does Soto go? We talked a little bit about the contenders for Juan Soto in recent videos, if you want to check that one out. But as far as where things stand currently, I would say the favorite still has to be the New York Yankees, just because they're really motivated to kind of get things back going in the right direction. Soto has 1 year left on his deal. If they trade for him before the season, they could still get a compensation pick back for him if they lose him in free agency in a year, if they can't re-sign him. So I would say the Yankees are still by far the front runner. I would put it probably 60-40 between him going to the New York Yankees, and the second team on my list is the Seattle Mariners. I think the Mariners are desperate to add some outfield talent around Julio Rodriguez. He is the star up there in the Pacific Northwest. That rotation is ready to go. They have a really good shortstop. J.P. Crawford's really developed into a nice shortstop there. Cal Raleigh behind the plate's been fantastic. They have a little bit of a hole at first and third. I think they would love to have better production than Ty France at first base. But I think for now, they'd be happy to go with it. They're still looking for a long-term answer at second base. There's been some talk that Jonathan India might be the trade target there. But starting pitching is what they have to give up if they decide to go the trade route. Young, controllable starting pitching, so they should be able to get the pieces that they want to bring in. I think the biggest move for them, the surprise for me really, is that Eugenio Suarez was traded, and they really were able to get off quite a bit of that contract. That's absolutely amazing. Absolutely shocked that the Mariners were able to offload that contract, because now they can either trade some of that young starting pitching, bring in another starter on free agency, spend money in free agency, go after a Cody Bellinger type to play the outfield and first base, upgrade Ty France. Ty France moves over to your DH spot, go after the trade for Jonathan India, trade Brian Wu going the other way. Mariners are going to be very active this offseason. They always are. Jerry Dipoto, one of the most active GMs in the sport. The other team that I expect to be one of the most active this offseason is the Atlanta Braves. I told you guys we'd get back to them. Sonny Gray seems to be all we're hearing lately as far as what they want to get done. Alex Anthopoulos, their general manager, absolutely likes to move quickly in free agency. He does not like to wait and wait and wait for the market. He wants to go out there and get the guys he wants. He was hard in there for Aaron Nola, ultimately had a higher bid than what he signed for with the Philadelphia Phillies. He just wanted to go back there. So what could we see? I think we're going to see a Sonny Gray signing with the Atlanta Braves, and then they're still going to be doing some big things this offseason. They already made the trade for Aaron Bummer. They traded a bunch of other guys off of their roster, non-tendered, a whole bunch more. They have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 roster spots available right now. I think it's down to 8 after the signing of Ronaldo Lopez, who's going to be stretched out as a starter to begin the season. We'll see if he makes the rotation. If not, they'll have a multi-inning reliever that throws 100 miles an hour out of the bullpen. He is going to be fantastic. But as far as the Braves, they are going to be very active, primarily in the starting pitching market with Sonny Gray. So, welcome in, Jordan. In your Ohtani news, just wanted to supposed to drop, or when is it supposed to drop? I would expect Ohtani to sign around the winter meetings. I'm not saying he's going to sign before, but I'm expecting somewhere during the winter meetings we could finally get some resolution with Shohei Ohtani. I think all the teams are going to want to make their decision based on what he's going to do. Say if the Dodgers win the sweepstakes, great. Well, now they can pivot to go after starting pitching. If they don't win that sweepstakes, then they can pivot to bring back J.D. Martinez. They can bring in a couple of starting pitchers, and then they're good to go. But as far as Ohtani, the market for him, I think, is still the top three teams being the Texas Rangers, the LA Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs. I think those are the top three teams right now in his market. Other teams are still in the periphery, are going to be the Padres, are going to be the Giants, the Mariners, Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets, pretty much any big market team really that can afford a $50 to $60 million salary on their books. So I would say it really comes down to those top three, though, between the Dodgers, Rangers, and Cubs, where he ultimately signs. I'd be shocked if he signs anywhere else, but I'm not ruling it out either. He does have an affinity for Ichiro Suzuki, who is still very connected with that Mariners organization. We see him take batting practice before games out there quite often. So I would not be surprised, per se, if it was the Mariners as that mystery team who ultimately bring him in. They are always perpetually looking for a first base DH type, and he obviously fits that DH mold right now. But as far as when, I'm expecting around the winter meetings is when we see a Shohei Ohtani signing. We talked a little bit about Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the other one of the many international free agents this offseason. He's going to draw quite the interest around Major League Baseball. I would say the Cardinals, the Mets, the Rangers, the Dodgers, the Giants, the Mariners, Blue Jays, Yankees, Red Sox are all in play for Yamamoto, among others. I would not be surprised if we see a mystery team ultimately sign him. Will Alonso stay with the Mets? Good question. Will he sign an extension? Absolutely not. That's not happening before the season. The comps for him and what he's looking for are way too far apart. You think of what the Matt Olson contract was for the Braves, among other contracts in recent memory for first baseman, Freddie Freeman's contract with the Dodgers. I think Alonso's a great player. I think he's going to be a fantastic sign wherever he signs, even if it's back with the Mets. But if I had to say right now, if the Pete Alonso's going to stay with the New York Mets, I would have to say 55-45 no. The only reason why I'm saying that is because the Mets, I don't think, did themselves any favors by selling at the trade deadline this past season, letting it be known to Max Scherzer, among others, that they were not going to be in contention really for 2024. He does not want to have, any year of his career go by the wayside. At least Max Scherzer doesn't. Pete Alonso's the same way, and he's a big personality, a big part of that team, a big part of that lineup for the Mets. It's hard to see what their options are if they lose him, but you're talking about a slugger who's honestly, the market for him is probably in that 8-year 160 range that Matt Olson signed, maybe a little bit more because he does play in New York, I suppose. It takes a special breed to be able to handle the New York media, etc. But it's just a different animal when you go to New York and play, and I think Alonso's really learned how to play that well. It's just a matter of how much do the Mets really value that. We saw them go to the mat for guys in the past saying, hey, we just want short-term guys. We're not going to go after Jacob deGrom for 5 years, but we'll go after Justin Verlander for 2 on $43 million per year. High AAV, short-term deals. If that's the case, Pete Alonso's not taking a 2 or 3 year deal. He wants that long-term security of an Olsen-type contract, but I think he wants to be paid a lot more than that. I think the market, or what he was saying from the last reports I saw, was that he was seeking $28 million per year. I'm not sure that's really feasible right now with that Mets team. Sure, he could get it in free agency, and which is why I think there's a better than likely chance he finds a new home elsewhere. A lot of the big market teams are going to be needing a first baseman in the next year or so. Teams that have a first baseman already would love to upgrade theirs for a guy like Pete Alonso. So to answer your question, will he stay with the Mets? Again, 55 no, 45 yes. I see a lot of arguments for both ways, but if I had to guess which way this thing ultimately goes, I think the Mets and Alonso's camp are too far apart to be able to get things done. Yosei Kikuchi pull for the Japanese boys. Well, he does have that connection, I suppose, but I think he's going to have bigger connections with more recent imports like Kodai Senga. He would have a bigger tie, with the like the other big fish out there, the Otanis, the Yamamotos are going to be looking for guys that they idolize, the Ichiro Suzukis of the world, that type of player. Kikuchi, maybe he's, buddies with these guys. Who knows? But I think if you're just coming in out of the cold, hey, I'm Japanese, you're Japanese, so let's be friends, I don't think that's how things work. Welcome in, Charles. Are you going to be on a lot longer? I will be on quite a bit longer today. I was going to go ahead and make a longer video today since I missed the last couple days with you guys. And I'll be on for probably the next hour, hour and a half. We're going to do a lot of trade talk here in the next hour or so, going over some of the possibilities for trades. We're seeing a lot of rumors right now about Glasnow out of Tampa Bay. A lot of rumors right now about Dylan Cease. We'll dig into some of the packages that they could get from the Dodgers, from the Orioles. The Rangers, of course, still looking to supplement their roster. They're supposedly in the market for Corbin Burns, so are the Dodgers as well. So we'll be touching on quite a few teams. We'll go on the Juan Soto trail as well, see if there's any other mystery teams we can find for him. But appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you, Charles, for coming on back. We appreciate it. Again, if you're new here, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to be live for you guys throughout the winter meetings, bringing you updates as they happen. I already took off of work, so that way I'll be able to do short little videos for you guys, post them 15-second, hey, this is what we're about to go live and talk about, and then I'll immediately go live when those big news items do break. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, spam the heart in the chat if you haven't already. It really does help us out. Got about 15 of you guys with us right now, so appreciate you guys spending some time with us here on a Friday evening. So as I said, we're going to get into some trades, so let's get into it. BaseballTradeValues.com is the site that I like to use anyway. They're very good as far as measuring value of both prospects, money, all those things taken into account, age of a player, productivity, injury. And they recently updated their site to have a better calculation of these things as well. You can have a choice between a 2 or a 3-team trade. You can post it to the community. You can validate it to see if it makes sense. You can even add money to the deal if you want to. Not things you could usually do with like trade machines in the past for basketball from ESPN or anything like that. This is a really great site for that as well. So let's go ahead and start with a basic 2-team trade. We'll go ahead and start with... let's do some Juan Soto stuff. Let's see if we can find a surprise team for Juan Soto. First, we need to know what his value is for his last year of his deal. Remember, he's going to be making roughly $30 million. $33 million. His field value, $55.9. His surplus, $22.9. So, we have to come up with that much value on another team. Looking at the list of teams, let's just kind of run down the list. Do they make sense for a Juan Soto trade? Angels, say they sign Shohei Ohtani and they're trying to go out there and spend big and bring in a top-end talent, etc. Let's just say that's the best-case scenario for the Angels. They re-sign Shohei. Not going to happen, but let's say it does. Do they have the prospects to be able to get it done, even if that were to happen? No. Let's go ahead and move on. Astros, they've had a big issue spending money on players in the past. Padres are trying to get rid of money. Are they going to be able to eat some of the money for a Soto contract? No. Do they have the prospects to make a trade for a Soto-type deal? No. Do they have a hole for Soto in their lineup? No. Go ahead and cross them off your list. A's, are they anywhere close to contention? No. Cross them off your list. Blue Jays, could they make some sense as a Juan Soto fit? This is the first team, I think, out of these that might actually have an avenue to have him in their lineup. So, what could they give up for a Juan Soto? Let's say he goes to the Blue Jays. What do the Blue Jays have to give up? Looking at their major league talent, some of their best value, of course, is Gausman, who's really elevated into a really top-end ace-level starter since he got to Toronto. Bo Bichette, there were some rumors I saw recently about him going to Chicago. We'll see if that was just an article out of the blue from a reporter or if there's some teeth to it over the next week or so. I think it's more just pure, baloney here in the offseason, so don't buy into that one. Swanson has some real value out of the bullpen. That could be a viable option going back the other direction as far as off of the Major League roster. Kirk is still there as a DH catcher type player. They're still looking to get off the money of Manoah, and they don't really want him in the clubhouse from what I'm hearing. That relationship between player and front office might be fractured to the point of no return for Alek Manoah. So if you're looking for a major league player, you could say the headlining piece could be Kirk or Manoah going back the other way. Let's go ahead and put in Manoah since that seems to be more readily available of the two. On the minors side of things, what could they include here? I would say they're probably going to be looking for more of a starting pitcher type of a player. They could just look for some talent. They could go younger. They could go with a grab bag full of players. If I'm the Padres, I'd probably go with a kind of for a combination of both. I'd try to go with the younger guy here. And you're right now pretty close to the value. I don't think this is going to be overwhelming to get past the Mariners offer or the Yankees offer. So I think if you really want to overwhelm them, you throw in Martinez. Then you throw in something else from the Padres side of things just to even things out. But that could be something that could work for Juan Soto. Do I think this is a realistic possibility? No. I still think the Blue Jays have other bigger fish to fry, if you will. They're looking for third base. They're looking for center field. Juan Soto doesn't really fit that role, and he's got 1 year left on his deal. Is he really going to fall in love playing north of the border? I don't think so. So I'd go ahead and cross the Blue Jays off that list. Those Cubs rumors turned out to be, as they said, they were playing third base for the Cubs. Yeah, I thought so. I thought that was some hooey that I saw in Bo Bichette. But let's kind of continue going down the list. The Blue Jays, we're going to go ahead and say that's a no. The Braves perennially seem to have one of the better farm systems. Now they're in the bottom 10 of the entire sport. Do they have an opening out there in their outfield right now? They could use a corner outfielder, I suppose. Are they willing to spend $30 million on it for 1 year when they need starting pitching? I don't think so. So we'll go ahead and cross them off the list. Brewers, could they play in the top of the market for an outfielder? I don't think so. They already have some big-time money in Christian Yelich. They have a lot of good, young, cost-controlled outfielders. They need starting pitching. They need middle infield. They need corner infield. They don't need outfielders. They have plenty of those prospects already ready at the major league level. Cross them off your list. The Cardinals, we've heard them in the past. They were in there for Juan Soto in years past. So what could they ultimately turn around and trade? Well, you could headline this trade with a guy like, where's Carlson? I think he was down really low here. Yep, there's Dylan Carlson, 5.8. He's still got 3 years left to control, so that'd be good for the Padres. His cost isn't too high as well. So there's a good start to the trade, but now you're going to have to include some minor league talent. So where could the Cardinals go when we get to the minors? Roby, the top guy they got from that Jordan Montgomery deal, they could go with one of those starting pitchers. They need starting pitching. I'm not sure they want to trade any of it, but they could trade some of their outfield talent. So let's go ahead and just throw in a couple of names here. Davis and second base project that they got from the Rangers, Sagassi. Let's go ahead and say that's your trade here. 22.7, 22.9. Fairly decent deal. If you're the Cardinals, do you do this type of a move? We already saw them bring in Kyle Gibson. We saw them bring in Lance Lynn, $10 million deals-ish, essentially 1 year deals with options after that. They could catch lightning in a bottle. They could keep Juan Soto long term. They have the ability to find a hole for him out there in the outfield, I'm sure. They have players that are out there right now that they can kind of flex around. But do I think this is a legitimate option? I do not. I don't think the Cardinals are looking for an outfielder per se. I think they want to add starting pitching first. And if Juan Soto still hasn't been traded by, say, Christmas, which I think is ludicrous. I think he's going to get traded around the winter meetings, possibly even at the winter meetings. But I don't think there's any way he makes it past Christmas still on the Padres roster. This could be a deal that maybe the Cardinals can at least get their foot in the door for. Do I think this wins them the bidding? I do not. I still think the Mariners and Yankees still outpace them for Juan Soto. Let's keep going down the list. Chicago Cubs, do they make sense for a Juan Soto deal? They are looking to spend. If they lose Cody Bellinger, they're going to need a bat. But they're still looking for some starting pitching, and they have a lot more holes than one Juan Soto to be able to get this done. Any package of Wynn, Wisenhunt, Ramos, Matos, and Bart would work to get Luis Robert out of the White Sox. That would be a great start as far as the package goes. If I'm the White Sox, I certainly would consider it. But Luis Robert, I'd probably hold on to until the trade deadline, and then I might trade him then or after the season. I just think they've got too many fish in the fryer right now to be able to trade him. Could a team overwhelm him with an offer like this? Sure. But I still think they're going to hold on to him through at least the trade deadline and just see what happens around then. If they can get a great deal like this or maybe even more, great. But a package like that would at least get you to hear, or would be able to hear them out if you're Chris Getz from the White Sox. We'll see, what happens, but I would be shocked if Luis Robert moves this offseason. Continuing with our Juan Soto discussion, Cubs, like I said, they just have too many holes on this roster. They're not a Juan Soto away. They're going to add via free agency first. I think if they're able to bring in Shohei Ohtani and they want to convince Soto to stay after the season by bringing in Shohei and bringing back Bellinger and signing Yamamoto and spending all these gobs and gobs and gobs of money, maybe. Do I think it'll happen? I think that's a 0% chance. Diamondbacks, go ahead and cross them off the list. They have too many good young outfielders already. Sure, they don't have Lourdes Gurriel, but I have no doubt that they are not interested in bringing in Juan Soto. Dodgers, they could be a team that if they bring in Shohei Ohtani and another starting pitcher, that they then pivot to Juan Soto as an option. But if you're the Padres and you've been going head-to-head with the Dodgers for years, do you make a trade with them, giving up one of your best players, if not your best player, best offensive player in Juan Soto? I don't think that happens either. In the division for Dodgers, I don't think that's a possibility. Giants, I think there's a little bit more of a window opening for them, just because they absolutely need something to happen. They could overpay for a Juan Soto. Are you going to be able to convince him to stay? I don't think so. And I think that's where the discussion pretty much ends in that Giants front office. Unless they bring in Shohei and really build out this roster this offseason and then go after him next offseason, then I think that's when the conversation really picks up for Juan Soto going to the Giants. He kind of fits that Aaron Judge role for them. But I think they're going to wait for free agency to pursue him more than anything else. Guardians, they don't have the budget to play in the Juan Soto sweepstakes. We're not even going to really worry about that one. We'll get to the Mariners in just a moment. I told you they're going to be one of the two teams I expect to be heavily interested in Juan Soto and possibly get the deal done. Marlins, they could use a bat like that in their outfield. They certainly made some big strides this past season with Skip Schumacher winning the NL Manager of the Year. Their offense performed significantly better with the additions they made in Luis Arraez, Jake Berger, among others. Soto would be a big boost to that team. Can they convince him to stay long term? Sure, I suppose, with Miami, etc. But are they going to have the finances to be able to get it done? A 10-year, $400 million deal somewhere in there is probably going to be what it takes to get Juan Soto signed. I don't think they do. Cross them off the list. New York Mets were right in there for Juan Soto all the way to the deadline. He could be kind of the Starling Marte replacement in the lineup. Maybe even push Marte off the field entirely to a DH role. Keep him healthier, hopefully. If you're the Mets, obviously you think you can sign him after this year because he's playing in New York. You have all the money. The owner is willing to spend. All those kind of things work in your favor. But are you willing to give up the prospect capital that you earned this past offseason by eating the money on the Scherzer and Verlander deals, by trading that talent for Juan Soto? And if you lose him in free agency, then you're really left with what? A compensation pick? I think that's a better conversation for the Mets to have after this season in 2025 when Pete Alonso is going to be a free agent as well. Maybe they could convince Pete Alonso to stay by saying, hey, we want to win by bringing you back. We signed Yamamoto this past offseason. Our starting pitching is a little bit better. The prospects that we have are starting to come up through the minor leagues. And now we can go ahead and win because we're going to sign you and Juan Soto. I think that conversation has a lot more bite to it than bringing in Juan Soto right now and losing a lot of what you've built over the last 6 months. So for the Mets, for that reason, I'm taking them out of the running. Nationals, they're the ones who traded Juan Soto. Are they going to want him back on a one-year deal? No. End of discussion. Orioles, they of course could use another high-end bat, but they're looking starting pitching. They have lots of player talent, and they still have more coming. One of the best young farm systems. They could make a trade for Juan Soto and still have plenty left over to go after starting pitching, sure. But do they really want to go after Juan Soto? I don't think they're in the market for him. I don't think they have any interest in him. I think they'd love to have that bat in their lineup, but I don't think they're willing to give up anything right now, especially considering the pieces that they have coming. May be all they need from an offensive perspective to be able to get things done. They may just need one veteran bat to kind of give them another professional hitter in that lineup. Think of what Aaron Hicks did for them after he was acquired from the Yankees. Something similar to that, low cost, something that's not going to break the bank. That way they can put all their eggs this offseason to acquire some starting pitching. So for that reason, again, go ahead and cross them off the list. Philadelphia Phillies, they already have kind of the big behemoth of a roster as far as finances. They're going to be looking to add to that bullpen. They don't really have the money to go out there and acquire a corner outfielder unless they move a contract like Nick Castellanos. There is some appetite to move him. Do I think he would be a fit in San Diego? Sure, but San Diego's looking to trim about $200 million or trim to the $200 million payroll threshold. And by bringing back Nick Castellanos in this deal, that wouldn't accomplish their goal. So I don't think there's really a fit for the Phillies to be able to get something like this done. Could they incorporate a third team to take on the contract of Nick Castellanos? Sure. And at that point, then I think it at least opens the discussion a little bit. But ultimately, I don't think a team is going to be willing to eat the contract of a Nick Castellanos without some type of sweetener that's going to make it unpalatable for either the Phillies or for the Padres to take that type of a deal. Pirates, they're not going to go after a guy like this. They don't go after people of this ilk with 1 year left until free agency. They want guys with cost control. They want 5, 6 years away from 5 years, 6 years away from free agency, 2 or 3 years away from arbitration. That's the players they're looking to go after, and they're looking for pitching as well, not position players. Rangers, this could be one of the teams that's in the market for Juan Soto. They could go out there and bring him in. He could be their left fielder to start, I suppose. Leave Wyatt Langford out there in the minors for at least a little bit. Do I think this is the best way to go if you're the Rangers fan? Absolutely not. I think they already have enough outfielders as it is, and Wyatt Langford I expect to be the opening day left fielder. I expect Evan Carter to be the opening day center fielder, and I expect Leody Taveras to be the odd man out in that outfield. And they still bring back some minor guys like Jankowski or Grossman to kind of round out the roster in the outfield. But do I think they have room for a Soto as the DH, I suppose, in this lineup? Sure. I just don't think they're going to go out there and spend the capital to get it done. They spend their capital as far as trades going after starting pitching. We saw that in the Scherzer deal. We saw that in the Montgomery Stratton deal. They want starters this offseason, and that's why they're trying to bring back Jordan Montgomery. Do I think they could at least make a phone call to the Padres just to at least see what their appetite is for a trade and what it would ultimately cost? Sure, but they're not going to give up somebody like Ezekiel Duran to get that done. Tampa Bay Rays, they're looking to move off of the contract of Tyler Glasnow 1 year from free agency. So they're not looking to acquire the same kind of thing coming back in. For that reason alone, cross them off your list. Reds are looking for some starting pitching, not outfielders. They got 6 young rookies this past year who really contributed to that lineup, and they're not going to be looking to add another position player with 1 year left to control. They could trade Jonathan India, I'm sure, but they're looking to use that trade chip to bring in some starting pitching. Cross them off your list. Red Sox. This could be a good fit, but they already have their outfield pretty much set right now. They're still looking for starting pitching. They're one of the teams that's in there for Jordan Montgomery's supposedly because they've already met with his representatives. I'm not sure they're still in the running from what I'm hearing, what we're hearing from John Heyman as of late. Sounds like it's down to a 3-team race anyway for him. But as far as Soto going there, they're still looking for at least 2 starting pitchers. They have other holes on that roster, mainly at second base, that they're looking to solve. And I think they're looking at those spots rather than a Juan Soto to come in and be their everyday DH. They could bring back Justin Turner to fill one of those holes for them, but I don't think they're going to be looking for a trade of Juan Soto. The Rockies, we can go ahead and cross them off their list. They're not in contention. They're going to look to buy a guy with 1 year left of free agency. He'd be great in Colorado, I'm sure, but come on, let's be realistic. The Rockies are not going after Juan Soto. Same thing with the Kansas City Royals. They're looking to develop some starting pitching. They're not going to trade for a guy 1 year from free agency. Tigers, they were the pick for John Paul Morosi to have a nice uptick in production next year. I'm not fully buying it, though. They need some starting pitching. I'm not sold on them being a team ready to compete for that Central Division title. I think they finished, second last year, but come on, it's the AL Central. Twins were great, primarily because of their second half, and they were able to advance at least one round for the first time in 18 years. Nobody's winning the World Series out of that division, certainly not the Tigers. And I think they're looking more at other pieces that they can bring in, like Seth Lugo that they've been connected to, Eduardo Rodriguez, some other starting pitching as well. Twins, they're looking to trim payroll, not add it. So for that reason alone, we can cross them off the list. They're looking to go young this offseason. White Sox, they're looking to shed some salary, not bring on a 1 year deal type player. Cross them off your list. So the only 2 teams we have not discussed are the 2 teams I told you would be the favorites for Juan Soto, the New York Yankees and the Seattle Mariners. So let's start with the Mariners discussion because I still think they're probably second in the race right now for Soto. What could it cost for the Mariners to get it done? Well, Padres are looking for some control. Harry Ford has been mentioned as a guy who's available. Just looking at the deal right here, I would say Harry Ford probably be the number 1 piece going back the other way. And then maybe some younger starting pitching that's in the minors right here. Let me pull this up. I think it might be on the majors roster now. Carlos Vargas was one of the names they just brought back. There it is. Hancock. That's one of the guys I was thinking that could go the other direction to the Padres. Let's say Vargas is another younger starting pitcher they can at least hope on if you're the Padres. So looking at this trade, Padres and Mariners, you get a good bat, somebody who solves your position long-term at catcher, supposedly, in Harry Ford. You get 2 starting pitcher prospects to kind of hope on there. You got a couple of big money guys as starting pitchers already in your rotation. Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, among others, that they don't necessarily need them to perform right now. Hancock could easily be brought in along the season as we go. Vargas, same kind of thing, but you're not really hoping for them to be your ace of the future. But this could be the type of deal that at least gets the conversation going for a Juan Soto. I'm sure the Padres would be more than willing to, include some other pieces that the Mariners might need for contention. I'm sure the Mariners would love to, discuss this type of a deal to get another star level player in there for Seattle. So I think there's at least room to talk on both sides of the table to get a deal done. They don't necessarily have to pigeonhole it to just these 3 players or just the return of Juan Soto going the other way. There's a lot of possibilities that could happen between the 2 teams, and Jerry Dipoto is a GM that likes to make trades. He will figure out a way to get something done, and if Juan Soto is the ultimate guy he wants on that roster for one of those corner outfield spots to take the place of Teoscar Hernandez, he will get it done. So that's why I'm saying Juan Soto to the Mariners, I'd probably put it the number 2 possibility. So let's go ahead and head on to the New York Yankees. Juan Soto, what could it ultimately cost the Yankees to get this type of a deal done? There has been some interest in some of the middle infield prospects that they have over the last year or so. I'm not sure any of that really excites the Padres. I think they're looking for more prospect status, more younger starting pitching, stuff like that. They're looking for the catcher or catching type prospects, etc. There's nobody really on the Major League roster that would really excite the Padres. That's why I think when you go to the minors system, that's where the Yankees being desperate, Brian Cashman, kind of tying this into our conversation earlier about Cashman and the missteps that he's made in recent years, he might be willing to give up more than he should at this point in time. So maybe they want to go for a young guy. You can put Arias as the headline of this package for a Soto. Then you want to get some starting pitching for what you gave up for Soto to acquire him from the Nats. Maybe you want to bring in a Hampton. Maybe you want to bring in, an older starting pitcher, a Warren. Maybe you want to go younger, and you bring in a Cerna. So we'll go ahead and put in Cerna here on the low end. Say you want to go really young. And then you want one guy that you can kind of hope on. Let's go ahead and throw in Thorpe. Let's look at this deal. Now again, Yankees are trying to get something big done this offseason. That's why I think there's room to talk on their side of the table. Same thing with the Padres side. They could be willing to, include another piece that the Yankees need, maybe a Kim, kind of multi-positional flexibility, although they have enough middle infield pieces, but maybe he could be their opening day third baseman. Who knows? But this could be the beginnings of a deal for the Yankees and Padres. So that's kind of where the Padres and Yankees sweepstakes could end, how the Juan Soto sweepstakes could go. Let us know in the comment section who you think ultimately has the best chance to win those sweepstakes. And if there's a mystery team out there, we went through the entire league, which of those teams do you think has the best chance to be a quote-unquote mystery team for Juan Soto? So let's go ahead and clear this one off. And let's do some fun trades. We talked a little bit about Dylan Cease. We'll go ahead and touch on his market just a little bit. There was some conversations about the Dodgers being the fit there. Dylan Cease, surplus value of 40.4. He has a significant value right now for the White Sox. Look at Robert's value. 4 years left of control right here, highlighted in blue right here. 4 years left of control. That's why, Paul, to answer your question once again, I just don't think it's going to happen right now. Looking at their roster construction and what they have on the Major League roster, just look at their majors right here. Dylan Cease, the most valuable commodity they have outside of Robert, only 2 years left to control. Now, right now, is the time to deal Dylan Cease. So that's why I expect them to try to get a deal done there. Other pieces we could see them move, a guy like Trace Thompson, some other, low end pieces off of this roster. Eloy Jimenez only got 1 year left on his deal. If they can find somebody to take that $16 million deal or that $16 million expectation there, that could be a possibility as well. But other guys, Michael Kopech's only got 2 years left. This was supposed to be the core of a really good World Series competitive team, and it just hasn't worked out. They've really tried the last 2 years to make things work, and for one reason or another, poor performance, injuries, among regression have just not really worked in their favor there in Chicago, and that's why they find themselves trying to sell here in the offseason and kind of restart their next opportunity to win. So that's why I'm expecting Dylan Cease to be the big name that's moved this offseason. So, back to the conversation as far as trade. What could the Dodgers ultimately give up for him? I think first and foremost, they want starting pitching, and he's very familiar with the minor league systems of both the Dodgers and Orioles. So you're going to have to give up some premium pieces that you may not otherwise have to or when you're negotiating with other teams. Other teams might not be as familiar with the minor league prospects that the Dodgers have, but the Dodgers and White Sox, I believe, share a spring training home, if I remember correctly. So, kind of keep that in mind as well in your when you're trying to figure out a deal. So, Cartaya is really blocked at the major league level, is at the catching spot. Maybe they want to go ahead and add a catcher. They already added a catcher though at the trade deadline that they're really high on. So, I'm not really sure they want to go after Cartaya to be the headliner of a package. I think they're going to go for more of starting pitching. So, looking at starting pitching, what could they give up? Bobby Miller, I just think has way too much value on there right now. Obviously, you see 63. Surplus for Cease is only 40. So, I don't think they'll be willing to give him up. However, there are a couple of names that you could throw in there. Sheehan's been one name that's been tossed around quite a bit. You saw him perform well this past season in a few spot starts. Stone has been another name. There's a couple of starting pitchers there. And then I think they're going to want to get one more premium bat. And so Michael Busch might be the guy that ultimately gets moved. So let's just see what this looks like. 58. I think you're a little high on this value. But like I said, the White Sox could trade you something back. So let's look at again on the White Sox side of things. What could they give up? You could give up a reliever with some control. They don't really need to hold on to any relievers at this point. So if I'm them, if somebody wants to, take one of my relief pitchers, like Aaron Bummer that we saw for the Braves, have at him. If I'm giving up pieces from this White Sox team. So another guy we could see move that has some value, Andrew Vaughn. He's played some corner outfield, etc. But if I had to guess, I would say they're going to want a relief pitcher back. So let's say that's what they want to go with. Controllable, young relief pitcher. Dodgers have done that in the past multiple times in trades for that second piece to be a younger relief pitcher. So something like this could be a great trade for both sides. They get 3 of the top 5 or 6 prospects anyway out of that Dodgers system for Dylan Cease. A couple of starting pitchers that they can really hope on, plug into that starting rotation at some point in the next year or two. Michael Busch, I think, starts immediately for them as well. But that would be a great trade, I think, for the White Sox. So I think the Dodgers would do it. Remains to be seen. They're going to have to outbid the Orioles. So this is a very good representative offer, I think, of what the final price might ultimately be for a guy like Dylan Cease. But it might not be these names. But it's going to be a high cost. I know that. Chris Getz is going to maximize his value out of that system. He might have his eye on other players in that minor league system that nobody's really paying attention to, but he sees something of real value there. He has some inside information, if you will, on that one because of their familiarity with that Dodgers minor league system. So keep your eyes peeled for the Dodgers. On the other side of things, let's go ahead and flip over to the Orioles. As the other team connected quite a bit to Dylan Cease, we'll go ahead and take Santos out of this deal. Again, 40 is our surplus here. Looking at the Major League roster, what could they give up? You're not going to give up Henderson. You're not giving up Rodriguez. Cowser might be the first piece that you could move. I think he ultimately stays on the roster. I think Westberg has the more likely chance. And then you get down into these guys here that I think have a more more realistic chance to get moved. Hurstead could be moved. We'll go ahead and put him in there as one of the top end pieces here. And then I think they're going to go after some guys that haven't really worked out, like DL Hall, lower value now, really hasn't worked out yet, but could immediately fit into that White Sox rotation. You could go after guys like, let's see here, not on the screen. Let's go to the minor league system here. Orioles still have a very good minor league system. They're not going to trade you Kobe Mayo. They're not going to trade you Jackson Holiday. But then you get into guys like Basayo. I think I'm going to go with Basayo. I think that's how I pronounce it anyway. But they could go with the catcher there. But like I said, they already acquired a catcher via trade. So maybe they go a little bit lower here and they want to go with the starting pitcher. They get Povich. Let's say they do that. Let's look at the trade compensation here. We're still not really close. Going to have to give up something a little bit more of value. They have a lot of position player talent. Let's say they go with Judd Fabian, just to kind of round out the deal. There's a lot of different ways the two teams could kind of come together. Orioles have the top farm system in all of baseball, and they desperately need starting pitching. So two of the best farm systems in the sport are really going to be vying for the same player here. I'm sure they'll have interest in other guys like Burns and Glasnow that are on the trade market, Bieber as well. But I think Cease is the one guy both teams have real interest in. I would probably go after a guy like Glasnow or Burns instead, even though they have 1 year left of control, whereas Cease has 2. You get 2 pennant runs with him. But I think both of the Glasnow and Burns are better pitchers than Dylan Cease. We saw him struggle to a 4.5 ERA this past season. Say he recovers and gets down to a 3.5 ERA, that would be a reasonable expectation for both sides on the high end and low end of his production. Let's just say he gets to a 3.5 ERA next year. I think Burns and Glasnow both finish with a better ERA and can frontline a rotation, whereas Cease, he may end up blowing up on you. He may regress even further. I would rather go with more proven track records in Burns and Glasnow, even with the injury concerns that you have for Glasnow and the injuries that he's had in the past. So give me Glasnow, give me Burns over Cease, but you could see easily why the Orioles and Dodgers make the most sense in a trade for the White Sox hurler. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate you guys, bearing with us over the last week or so. I hope you guys had a great time with your Turkey Day, spending time with family and friends. I know everybody, had some fun with the Black Friday game today with the pick six, Hail Mary pick six, 99-yard return by Javon Holland. That was insane. But the Jets being Jets, I guess. Sorry, New York fans. It's just, your quarterback's Tim Boyle. Not to say that, a guy named Tim Boyle can't be the next great quarterback, but I can tell you right now it's not. There's going to be long days ahead for Jets fans, but the Dolphins, again, kind of cruised to victory today. As far as the Black Friday shopping, I had some fun with that today. It was not the same that it used to be. I remember going out Black Friday shopping, everybody being crazy, going after the best deals, ripping the plastic off of everything. Now it's all online. It's very ho-hum. Even Walmart didn't put out stuff. It's not what it used to be. So hopefully you guys got what you want for Black Friday, got some of your Christmas shopping done, got to enjoy some turkey, spend some time at home. Hopefully you guys got off of work this weekend. Unfortunately, I did not. I still have to work tomorrow. But hopefully you guys just have a great time this weekend. What is the reason for winter meetings? Is it just to get everyone together to see if they can come up with trades? No, it's kind of like what the GM meetings are, except on steroids. GM meetings are where they kind of discuss the business of baseball, rule changes, the actual finances of the game, TV, all the things behind the scenes that we really aren't privy to. What they're going to allow in the stadiums, what can be done as far as certain instances during the game, a lot of things that are behind the scenes. Then, of course, you have the Rule 5 draft at the winter meetings. You have a lot of the bigger issues. The Hall of Fame discussion is also there for the winter meetings. The winter meetings is also used to be an expo for the sport. It was a great way to advertise if you're a baseball product provider. So, for instance, say you're a bat manufacturing company and you want players to have access to your baseball bats. The winter meetings is where you would go and be able to showcase your wares. Now, sure, you could go that and go one by one to each team, but the winter meetings is where you'd go and talk to those guys. It's also been a great way for teams, fan bases to connect with their fan bases. We see managers, coaches, etc., walking the halls of the same hotel, signing autographs, talking with people. Just, hey, by the way, there's one Washington 3 feet away. Let me go say hi. That's what the winter meetings has always been. So with COVID, it kind of changed things up a little bit, but everything's back to pretty much the same way it always has been. There's a limited number of vendors that are now allowed at the winter meetings, so that's kind of what the winter meetings are all about now, Robert. Hopefully that kind of answers your question, and of course there is still the trade talk. Uh, One thing they always make fun of now on MLB Now, on MLB Network anyway, is that there used to be the trade that be 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, one GM smoking a cigar, drinking, saying we're just spitballing trade ideas, and ultimately agreeing to a trade at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, writing it down on a piece of on a napkin, and then ultimately making the trade the next day. Trades like that don't happen. It takes full front offices. They investigate every single player, check out the medicals, etc. Trades don't just happen with one guy signing off on it, and that's the way it is. It's literally a whole group effort at this point, and that's why trades aren't necessarily as lopsided as they used to be. Sure, there are still winners and losers, but you don't really see like the crazy lopsided trade. Of the most recent trades that we've seen over the last 10, 20 years, you can probably count the most lopsided of them that at the time were lopsided more than any other. So you look at like the Mark Teixeira trade for the Texas Rangers. They ended up giving up a season of him, or half season of him, and he ends up giving them a closer that gets them to the World Series, a starting pitcher that gets them to the World Series, a catcher that stays with the team for another year or two. They get their starting shortstop for a 10, 15-year period. Just a great trade for the Texas Rangers. Other trades we've seen were around that same time as well, very lopsided at that time. One or two trades here or there, but outside of that, you don't really see like, Randy Johnson being dealt for a bag of balls. I'll put it that way. Thank you for that. I was just wondering why people said deals will happen after winter meetings, but you did answer my question. Thanks. I try, Robert. I try. But to kind of answer your question a little further, winter meetings are where the trade talks that you've had over the last year during the season, where you said, hey, once we get to the off season, we'll revisit these trade conversations. For instance, the Dylan Cease talks. The Dylan Cease conversation is kind of what I'm referring to right now. That the talks that they had with Baltimore this or during the trade deadline are immediately going to pick up right where they left off. Some players in the Baltimore system performed a little bit better. Some players did a little bit worse. Same thing for Dylan Cease. We saw him pitch to a 4.5 ERA. He didn't exactly have a great year last year. So is his value really at 40 in their eyes? Or do they have him measured at, say, more of a 35 or a 45? Each team measure things just a little bit different, but in all honesty, it's all a lot of groupthink at this point, to where every team kind of knows what you have. You're not really going to be hiding things or pulling one over on another team, much like you would have in the past. Things are much more out in the open. Numbers are readily available. Baseball Reference you can go to and find whatever you want. You can look up minor league stats through Baseball America for $20 or whatever. You can get a year subscription to all these other sites that give you any number that you might be interested in. And all these baseball players you've been following since they were 14 years old, playing, club league baseball, with a little league team. So there's a lot of numbers out there. You're not going to be surprising teams. So those conversations that you had during the season about Dylan Cease, about those minor league prospects that you're interested in, now can come to a little bit closer of a head. Now you got more understanding about what the player's true value is. You have a better idea about where those prospects are headed, and now a deal can come together a little bit easier. There's no rush to get it done by a deadline. Opening day really is your deadline. Winter meetings, you'd like to be able to get some of this business done, but there's no real impetus for any specific day to be that deadline. So as far as the trade talk specifically for the winter meetings, it's about the trade talks that happened at the trade deadline that didn't get done, now are revisited. The trade talks that happened at the GM meetings in November, setting the stage for what happens in December at the winter meetings, that's probably the biggest impetus for trades at this point. So discussions that were really had a couple weeks ago in Florida anyway, are now going to be revisited quite heavily when we get to Nashville, as teams now have gotten back to their front offices to figure out what trades make sense, what players they might be interested, and then revisit with those same GMs and figure out what they can do to get a deal done. So I would expect this year to be a little bit more active on the trade market, especially the position player side. I'd expect a few starting pitchers to kind of that might surprise us. I was literally, let me grab a drink real quick. I was literally kicking around an idea, since you guys know I'm a Rangers fan, that the Rangers are looking to bring back Jordan Montgomery. They're looking to bring in Josh Hader, a relief pitcher. They're looking to bring back a DH of some type, whether that be Garver, whether that be going with the Duran from within, or going with Shohei Ohtani. The one thing that kind of had me wondering was, with the starting pitching market as it is, the Rangers could do a little bit of both. They could do a little bit of buying and selling. For instance, I talked to you guys a lot about Leody Taveras being the guy that could be the odd man out. But I had a little bit of a thought. Rangers have shown that they really like Dane Dunning and his ability to be a swingman, a guy who can start, fill in for Jacob deGrom, a guy who can come out of the bullpen and pitch you 2-3 innings during the regular season. But we saw when they got to the postseason, they went with guys that they believed had more stuff, quote unquote. What that means is more movement on their pitches, higher velocity type throwers, players that they believe can get one specific out. They might not be able to pitch you 6-7 innings, but they're going for guys that had better stuff. And that's why Dane Dunning didn't really get the opportunity that we saw him perform at during the regular season. Did you guys know he led the Rangers in innings pitched last year during the regular season? Did it look like that mattered at all when it got to the postseason? It did not. There's a lot of starting pitching out there on the free agent market, but it's still not enough to cover the needs of other teams. So I know there's some teams out there that are going to be left without anybody to fill those spots, and that's where the Rangers, I think, could come up with some possibilities to improve their roster even further. So the idea that I was kicking around was Dane Dunning being the odd man out of that starting rotation, them having the money to go out there and bring back Jordan Montgomery. They're still going to be over the luxury tax. I don't think there's any way around that at this point, unless they don't bring back Montgomery, they just sign Hader, don't bring back Garver, and just go with bare bones and not make a trade acquisition at the deadline. But this is the chance for a World Series team to really put their foot on the accelerator and say, no, we're making a dynasty, the first one that it might win back-to-back World Series since the New York Yankees 20 years ago. There are some other great teams that are still in the middle of their championship window, like the Braves. The Dodgers could reopen that with the acquisition of Shohei Ohtani. The Astros are still right there for at least one more season. The Mets are going to be there in a year or two. The Phillies are right there. We saw how good they are. And then every year you might get a surprise team out of nowhere, like the Arizona Diamondbacks, who make a run at the World Series. Then you have, of course, the Seattle Mariners in your own division, looking like they want to be a competitor in that division. Things are not getting easy, so I do not expect Chris Young and the ownership there to really step off the gas at any point. So I don't think they're really worried about losing compensation picks or losing draft picks in the draft. I don't think they're worried about money or luxury tax. That's why I told you, if Shohei Ohtani says, hey, I want to be on your roster, they say, okay, bet, we're signing you. That immediately takes them over the luxury tax threshold. They still need some relief pitcher. Pencil in Josh Hader, $20 million, or some other reliever of that ilk. Then you have to pencil in another DH type. They are not, or another starting pitcher after you sign Shohei. They are not going to stop spending. So I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about what the Rangers want to do. They want guys with stuff in that rotation. That's why they got Max Scherzer. That's why they got Jordan Montgomery, because they had a pitch that they really liked with him. And of course, the connection that they had with Mike Maddox. So I'm just very curious to see, what the Rangers do. But the thought that I had was Dane Dunning being the odd man out. What could you get for him? Say the Cardinals just don't like the price of poker to sign any one of these free agents, and they want a guy who can eat some innings. I know the Pittsburgh Pirates are also looking for some pitching as well. Maybe you could bring in Dane Dunning, and he could be your number 2 starter to open the season, give you 180 to 200 innings, and there you go. Bednar could be the return, along with another piece going the other way to the Pirates, maybe another starting pitcher like White or Leiter. That'd be a great start to a great package anyway to get that type of a deal done. So let's kind of do that one real quick. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they've been connected quite a bit to the Rangers. They've made multiple trades over the past 3 or 4 years. Let's say they go after Dane Dunning. That's the piece they want. They want a starting pitcher that's already got some club control. He's got 3 years left on his deal. Sure, they'd like a guy that's younger, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. He's only 29 years old, and he's not exactly going to blow you out of the water financially once he gets to free agency. But he can still give you some good innings. And then you get a guy with club control like Owen White, one of the Rangers' top pitching prospects. There's a good start to a trade. Now Bednar for the Pirates. Let me grab him real quick. Looking at this type of a trade, what do you guys think? Like I said, Rangers would still go out there and get Jordan Montgomery. They'd still have a very good starting 5. Scherzer, Montgomery, Eovaldi, Gray, Heaney. They'll probably bring back another starter or 2 in free agency to kind of round things out. Dane Dunning, we saw him pitch great last year, gave them a lot of innings. But when they got to the postseason, Bochy didn't necessarily trust him to have the best stuff. And even though he could get them innings during the regular season, they want the guy that can get that out. They want an out-getter. They're not necessarily worried about longevity of innings, getting through the order 2.5, 3 times. Dane Dunning has that ability and can show those young pitchers in Pittsburgh how to get the job done. They've got a really good top-of-the-rotation guy already coming in their system. Let me pull him up here. I think his name was Skeens. He was the top pitching prospect in last year's draft. He is going to be the ace of that team in the future. Then you have a rotation with Skeens, Keller, Dunning is your number 3 in this rotation. And then Pittsburgh really has a rotation that if they can get some of these younger starting position player prospects to get through the system, which it sounds like they're getting close, then you really have something if you're Pittsburgh. But for the Texas Rangers, this really kind of gets them back on the right track as far as that bullpen. Bednar would be one great building block for them. Hader would be another. They'd bring in Montgomery. And like I said, if they win the Shohei sweepstakes, fantastic cherry on top for them. Otherwise, they can settle for the J.D. Martinez, the Justin Turners of the world, the Mitch Garvers of the world to fill in that spot. So we shall see. But what do you guys think of this trade possibility? I think there's going to be some surprise trades that we see out of nowhere for starting pitchers with some level of control. And I think Dane Dunning is kind of the perfect example of a pitcher that normally would not be available from a team, but the team might like that pitcher, but not necessarily as much as other guys that they have on their roster. So for the Rangers, they obviously love Eovaldi. They really want to bring back Montgomery. That's 1 and 2. You already have DeGrom. At some point, you're going to get him back later on in the season, but you still need starters right now. So you plug in, say, Gray over the top of him right now, or Heaney. Heaney could move to the bullpen late in the year like he did this past year once DeGrom is healthy. Gray is a good starter for a 162-game season, and we saw how great he was after he got healthy in the ALCS and the World Series. So he was a weapon out of the bullpen late for them. But the Rangers pretty much already have a rotation set right now, and if they bring in Jordan Montgomery, I think that makes that rotation that much better. Dane Dunning, while he really kind of elevated his strikeout numbers late in the year, they still didn't trust him to be able to do the same thing once they got to the postseason. They didn't trust him to do it, and that's the biggest worry I have for Dane Dunning long-term with the Texas Rangers. Oh, like Philly did not play Walker at all in the playoffs. Exactly! I don't understand why Philadelphia didn't use Taijuan Walker. He was great all season, and then once they got to the postseason, he sat on the end of the bench and did nothing. Dane Dunning, same thing for the Texas Rangers. He was their best pitcher for the majority of the season, and sure, they had higher highs for Eovaldi in the first half, but Eovaldi was terrible in the second half. He's a great postseason performer. You knew you were going to throw the ball out with him at some point, but up until that point, in 5 starts in September, Eovaldi had been garbage. I mean, he did elevate his level of play. Let's not understate that. I mean, he did elevate it. Great postseason performer. Needed time to get back healthy. He didn't go to the minors for a rehab start. He was kind of rehabbing on the fly at the major league level, and that's why his numbers were elevated. But there was no reason for the track record at that time to say, hey, this guy's going to have a better postseason than Dane Dunning, but yet they went with the guy they trusted to have the better stuff, even though they didn't necessarily have the proven track record of, say, the last month of proven success. Same thing like you say there, Robert, with Taijuan Walker. Great season for him up there in Philadelphia, yet they trusted Wheeler, they trusted Nola, both of whom I would have probably trusted over Walker as well. And then they trusted Suarez, who's really elevated over the last couple of years with his play in the postseason. But up to that point, I would have said Walker would have been their number 3 or at least their number 4 starter. Instead, they didn't really use him at all once they got to the postseason. So let us know in the chat what you guys think about the possibility of some surprise trades like a Dane Dunning, like a Taiwan. I'm not saying they'll trade Taiwan Walker if you're Philly, but you might see an opening in the market to make some things happen. Say you really want to bring in a Blake Snell, but you don't have the money for it. You might offload the contract of a Nick Castellanos by attaching a Taiwan Walker to it, bringing in Blake Snell and bringing in another more agile outfielder. That might get you more athletic. That could be another opportunity for them. So there's going to be some very good out of the box type thinking from some GMs out there, and the teams that do that, like Dunning or like trading Dunning or Walker, could be the teams that have the best shot at winning the World Series next year, just because they're capitalizing on the opportunity that's out there right now. The need for starting pitching is so strong, prices are going to be high in trades. Do you think that aggravates Dunning or Walker to not re-sign or trade them? I don't think it soured them on either of those teams. I think both Dunning and Walker were very happy with being there, just purely winning the World Series if you're Dunning, being in a postseason competitive environment if you're Taijuan Walker. Those guys hadn't been in those types of environments in the past, but they were not trusted when it came to October baseball. Could it be an issue if they're not trusted next year or this coming season? Absolutely. But right now, I don't think there are any worries right now among either player as far as them being soured on their team. I think they're a little bit surprised, sure, that they were not utilized by their teams, but a team that's willing to maximize opportunity, I guess, is the argument I'm trying to make. And Dunning being a surprise that I don't think anybody was really thinking of that could be available here in the offseason as far as a trade candidate. I have yet to see one real article talk about him as being a trade candidate, but we saw them not trust him in the postseason. I mean, that's the biggest inclination that they trust Scherzer more, who really was season-ending injury is what they expected at the time. But of course, it's Max Scherzer. You want to give him a chance to play. Eovaldi, same thing. We just talked about him. Jordan Montgomery, I expected to be in the rotation. He was fantastic. I thought that his performance during the stretch for the Rangers was just as good as Dane Dunning. But Dane Dunning deserved to have a chance to be a starter in the postseason for the Rangers before Max Scherzer. So that was at least my thought. I thought Scherzer, while he was better, had higher highs as well than Dane Dunning. The track record of performance, the ability to be healthy coming into the postseason, I thought he would have been a great fit for the Rangers in the postseason. They ultimately chose not to use him. I thought, well, if you're going to use Scherzer as your Game 3 starter, at least bring him in to piggyback him and give him 2 or 3 innings to close off a game. Maybe use him as a Eovaldi closer years ago when we saw him finish off a postseason game pitching 5-6 innings in relief. Dane Dunning could easily do that, and we've seen him do that in the past for the Rangers. He did that multiple times this year when he filled in for Jacob deGrom after deGrom would leave after, say, 2 or 3 innings due to an injury. Dunning has that ability. They didn't allow him to do it in the starting rotation in the postseason. They didn't allow him to do it out of the bullpen. Instead, they tried to play matchup baseball, which is, I guess, what you have to do in the postseason. But if you're not going to let him start, you're not going to let him eat innings in the postseason, what exactly is he doing on your roster for you, besides eating innings during the regular season? So that's not nothing. That's something that has to be addressed for them as well. If they lose Dane Dunning, they have to find somebody to fill those innings as well. But I think the Rangers are going to have plenty of starting pitching to choose from. And if they decided to capitalize on the market right now, Dane Dunning really showed a great ending to the season. Elevated strikeout numbers, decreased walk rates, getting deeper into games. He showed that he can be a number 2 type starter right now by how he finished the season. He showed you that he can at least be a number 3 by the innings he ate last year. He still could be an ace at some point. I don't think he's there yet. I think he's a very good number 3. I think he's a lower to mid-end number 2 in a rotation right now that could elevate to a top-end number 2 starter in a rotation. But if a trade like this were to happen with Pittsburgh, just looking at it, Paul Skeens is your 1 at some point. Keller is your number 2. And then you have Dunning as your 3. That would be a great 1-2-3 if Pittsburgh can get some production out of that lineup. Would really have something cooking for them. So appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit the heart in the chat if you haven't already. Really appreciate the conversation we've had with you guys, Robert, Jordan, Paul, like I said, we're going to be live for you guys the next couple of days as well, since we didn't do one on Thanksgiving. We're going to give you some live broadcasts over the weekend. We'll get into some more trade talks as well. If you have any comments, you guys can post them on some of the videos. We'll have some of those coming out in the coming days as well. We'll do a little bit of football talk as well in some of those short videos, so feel free to stick around. We'll get into some basketball and hockey games as well in the next week or two. And then remember, the winter meetings are coming up. I've already taken off. We're going to be live from the, not from the winter meetings, during the winter meetings for you guys here in our studio. So we appreciate the support. Thank you for those hearts. Thank you for the likes on the video. We really do appreciate it. Y'all have a great evening, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow.